The sun hung high over the village of Ilorin. Lively drumming echoed through the air as maidens twirled in vibrant wrappers, their beads clinking rhythmically. It was the festival of harvest, a time of joy and thanksgiving. The scent of roasted maize and spicy suya filled the air. In the midst of the celebration, Princess Eniola danced with a carefree spirit, her delicate golden anklet gleaming on her left ankle. Her laughter was as light as the breeze, her eyes sparkling with happiness. Despite her royal status, she loved mingling with her people, sharing in their joys and stories. By her side was Amina, a humble orphan who was like a sister to the princess. Though she had little, Amina's heart was full of love and loyalty. Their bond was evident in every shared smile. Standing a little distance away was Zainab, Amina's childhood friend. Her gaze lingered on the princess, her lips curled in a faint smile, but her eyes held a flicker of envy. She admired Eniola's beauty, her grace, and most of all the golden anklet, a symbol of her royal lineage. As the sun began to go down, Eniola playfully ran towards the old baobab tree at the edge of the square. "Catch me if you can," she teased, her laughter echoing through the air. Amina chased after her, her sandals kicking up dust. The two girls disappeared behind the giant tree, their giggles fading into the evening breeze. Moments passed, then minutes. The music continued, but there was no sign of the princess. Amina returned to the square, her face pale with worry. "I can't find Eniola," she cried, her voice trembling. Panic spread through the crowd. Villagers gathered, calling the princess's name, their voices tinged with fear. Chief Adisa, the wise and beloved ruler, rushed to the scene, his eyes wide with dread. "Search every corner," he commanded, his voice firm but desperate. The villagers scattered, searching the fields, the riverbank, and every hidden path. But Eniola was nowhere to be found. Then, near the old baobab tree, Amina's foot struck something cold. She looked down and gasped. There, half buried in the dust, was Eniola's golden anklet. She picked it up, her hands trembling, her heart pounding in her chest. When she returned to the square, she held up the anklet, her eyes filled with tears. "I found this, but no sign of Eniola." A collective gasp rose from the crowd. Chief Adisa's face paled, his shoulders sagging under the weight of fear and sorrow. His voice quivered as he declared, "Whoever finds my daughter and returns this anklet shall receive half my kingdom." The crowd murmured in shock, their eyes widening with disbelief. Half the kingdom? The promise echoed through the square, igniting a spark of greed and ambition. Amidst the murmurs, Zainab's lips curved into a sly smile. Her eyes gleamed with a sinister thought. "Half the kingdom," she whispered to herself, a plan forming in her mind. The village was gripped by fear and uncertainty. Night had fallen, but no one slept. Lanterns flickered outside every hut as whispers filled the air. How could the princess vanish without a trace? Who would dare harm the beloved daughter of Chief Adisa? A search party was quickly assembled. Warriors armed with spears and torches scoured the village and its outskirts. They combed through the farmlands, peered into every hut, and called out Eniola's name until their voices grew hoarse. But the princess was nowhere to be found. Chief Adisa stood at the center of the square, his face etched with worry. His wife, Queen Moreo, wept softly, her hands clutching the golden anklet that Amina had found. "This is all that remains of my child?" she whispered, her voice breaking. Amina stood nearby, her head bowed in shame and guilt. "I should have stayed by her side. I should have protected her." Tears rolled down her cheeks as she clutched the scarf Eniola had gifted her. Zainab approached, her face a mask of concern. She placed a comforting hand on Amina's shoulder. "It's not your fault, Amina. We'll find her, I promise." But beneath her false sympathy, Zainab's mind raced with wicked schemes. The village witch doctor, Baba Aro, arrived at the square, leaning on his ancient staff. His white beard flowed down his chest, his eyes clouded with wisdom. He circled the anklet, chanting incantations and throwing cowrie shells onto a mat. The shells scattered, forming a pattern that made him gasp. "The spirits are restless," he declared, his voice trembling. "The princess is trapped." The villagers gasped. "What must we do to bring her back?" Chief Adisa asked, his voice heavy with desperation. Baba Aro's eyes grew dark. "Only one who truly loves the princess can find her. They must follow the whispers of the wind and enter the forbidden forest." A shiver ran through the crowd at the mention of the forest. a place feared by all, said to be home only to ancient spirits. Amina stepped forward, her fists clenched. "I will go," she declared. "I love Eniola like a sister. I will bring her back." The villagers murmured in awe. Queen Moreo's eyes softened, but fear flickered across her face. "Child, the forest is dangerous. Many have entered and never returned." Chief Adisa's shoulders slumped. He saw the determination in Amina's eyes, the fierce loyalty that mirrored his own love for his daughter. With a heavy heart, he nodded. "May the spirits guide and protect you." Zainab's eyes narrowed, her lips curling into a sly grin. "I will go too," she announced, feigning courage. "Eniola is my friend as well." But in her heart, she saw the journey as an opportunity to eliminate Amina and return a hero, claiming the reward and perhaps even the throne. Baba Aro handed each girl a blessed talisman. "These will protect you from the forest spirits, but only if your heart is pure." His eyes lingered on Zainab a moment longer before he turned away. The two girls stood at the edge of the village, ready to embark on their perilous journey. The villagers watched in silence, their faces painted with worry and hope. A cold wind rustled through the trees. A chill ran down Amina's spine, and she turned to Zainab. "Are you ready?" Zainab shook her head, her eyes cold and calculating. "No, but let's go before nightfall traps us." Together they stepped into the shadows of the forbidden forest, unaware of the danger lurking within and the betrayal that awaited. The path ahead was dark, and with every step the forest seemed to grow denser, the air colder. Amina's heart raced, but she pressed on, guided by love and hope. Zainab followed, her mind filled with greed and jealousy. Unseen by Amina, she smirked, her fingers brushing against a hidden dagger at her waist. They followed a narrow path, winding deeper into the heart of the forest. The trees seemed to lean closer, their branches whispering in voices too soft to understand. Amina's heart pounded as she heard the faint echo of Eniola's voice. "Help me, Amina!" She froze, her eyes darting through the shadows. "Did you hear that?" Zainab's face remained blank. "I didn't hear anything. Keep moving." Her voice was sharp, almost impatient. The path grew darker, the light from the sun swallowed by the thick canopy above. Strange creatures watched from the shadows, their eyes glowing softly before vanishing into the mist. A chill ran down Amina's spine as she felt the weight of unseen eyes. After what felt like hours, they reached a clearing. In the center stood an ancient tree, its trunk twisted and gnarled. At its base lay a pool of shimmering water, reflecting the pale light above. Amina gasped, her heart fluttering with hope. "This must be the river of shadows Baba Aro spoke of. We're close." She hurried toward the water, kneeling beside it. "Eniola," she called out, her voice trembling. Suddenly, the water rippled, and Eniola's face appeared on the surface. Her eyes were wide with fear, her hand reaching out. "Amina, save me!" Her voice was faint, echoing through the clearing. Amina reached out, her fingers brushing the water's surface. But as she did, the image shattered and the water turned black. A powerful force surged from the pool, knocking her backward. She hit the ground hard, gasping for breath. Zainab watched, her eyes gleaming with satisfaction. She stepped forward, feigning concern. "Are you all right?" Amina nodded, wincing as she stood. "She's here. Eniola is trapped here." Her voice was filled with determination. "We have to keep going." But Zainab had other plans. She placed a hand on Amina's shoulder, her grip tightening. "You're right, we do." Her smile was cold. Before Amina could react, Zainab shoved her toward the pool. Amina's feet slipped on the wet grass, and she tumbled forward, her body plunging into the cold, dark water. The surface closed above her, leaving no trace. Zainab stood over the pool, a cruel smile spreading across her face. "You were always so naive, Amina. Now I'll be the hero. I'll return to the village and tell them you were too weak to continue." She laughed, her voice echoing through the clearing. "And once I find Eniola, the throne will be mine." Satisfied, she turned to leave. But the forest had other plans. The ground trembled, and the ancient tree groaned. Roots burst from the earth, wrapping around Zainab's ankles, pulling her toward the pool. She screamed, struggling against the tightening vines. "No, let me go!" Zainab's body trembled as the vines pulled her closer to the water's edge. "Amina, please, forgive me." Her voice was a desperate whisper, tears streaming down her face. With a final scream, Zainab was pulled into the pool, the water swallowing her whole. The surface rippled once, and then grew still, reflecting the pale light above. Amina stepped out from the other end of the pool, her body shimmering. She looked down at the water, a tear slipping down her cheek. "Goodbye, Zainab. You were never a friend." Her voice was filled with sorrow, but also resolve. She turned toward the ancient tree, the whispers of the forest guiding her. "I'm coming, Eniola. Hold on." Her talisman glowed brightly, lighting her path as she continued deeper into the forest, determined to find her friend. The path twisted and turned, leading her deeper into the darkness. The air grew colder, and Amina shivered, but she pressed on, her determination unwavering. Suddenly, the ground beneath her feet trembled, and the whispers increased, merging into a deep, ominous voice. "Who dares disturb the peace of the shadows?" The voice echoed through the forest, shaking the trees and sending chills down Amina's spine. She looked around, her eyes wide with fear. I'm looking for my sister, Princess Eniola. She's trapped here. Please, let me save her." Her voice was pleading, her hands trembling as she clutched her talisman. The shadows swirled, gathering in front of her. They twisted and shifted, forming the shape of a towering figure cloaked in darkness. Its eyes glowed a sinister red, its presence cold and suffocating. "I am the guardian of shadows. No one leaves this place without paying a price." Amina took a step back, her heart pounding, but she knew she could not turn back. "Please, she's just a young girl. She doesn't belong here." Her mind raced. What could she possibly offer? She had nothing but her talisman. "Take me instead. Let Eniola go and I'll stay in her place." A low growl rumbled through the clearing. "Your sacrifice is noble, but foolish. You have a pure heart, child. However, purity alone is not enough." Before she could respond, the ground split open beneath her feet, and Amina could not stop herself from falling. Creatures lunged at her at every corner, their claws reaching out. Amina's body trembled with fear, but she stood her ground, holding up her talisman. The stone glowed brighter, casting a brilliant light that sent the shadows recoiling. Amina closed her eyes, focusing on her love for Eniola. Her talisman blazed with light, a radiant glow that enveloped her entire body. The shadows hissed, shrinking back as the light grew stronger. Amina heard their shrieks and tortured cries as they faded into the darkness. She felt herself lifting from the chasm, and the ground was beneath her once more. The guardian watched in silence. It raised its hand, and the pool of water in the clearing began to glow. Amina's heart leaped as she saw Eniola's face in the water. Her body emerged from the pool, floating toward her. She ran to her, catching her as she fell into her arms. "Eniola, you're safe, you're safe." Her tears flowed freely, her heart bursting with relief. Eniola stirred, her eyes fluttering open. "Amina, you came for me." Her voice was weak, but her smile was bright. She hugged her tightly, her voice choked with emotion. "I promised I would." The forest trembled. The path before them cleared, revealing the way back to the village. With Eniola leaning on her shoulder, they began the journey home, the shadows watching silently from the trees. But Amina didn't look back. She had faced her fears, and won. The sun was setting when Amina and Eniola finally emerged from the forbidden forest. Villagers gasped as they saw them approaching, whispers of awe and disbelief spreading through the crowd. "Amina! Eniola!" Queen Moreo rushed forward, her face streaked with tears. She pulled them into a tight embrace, her body shaking with relief. The witch doctor, Baba Aro, approached, his cane tapping against the ground. His wise eyes lingered on Amina's face before shifting to the glowing talisman around her neck. "You did it, child. You faced the forest spirits and survived." Amina nodded, her gaze steady. "He was powerful, but love is stronger. I couldn't leave Eniola behind." Baba Aro's expression softened. "You have a brave heart, Amina. But remember, the shadows never truly vanish. You must always keep your light strong." Amina looked down at her talisman, its glow soft and warm. "I won't forget." The villagers surrounded them, their faces filled with admiration and respect. They sang songs of victory, their voices echoing through the evening air. Drums were beaten and fires were lit, illuminating the celebration that lasted long into the night. Amid the joyous laughter and dancing, Amina sat with Eniola, her heart finally at peace. That night, as sleep claimed her, the whispers returned. "Amina, Amina." She jolted awake, her heart pounding. Was it just a dream, or was the shadow still watching?